Welcome back, Fantasy Fiction Fanatics. It's great to see you again, and I hope you're doing well. Today's class is going to be on the first 6 chapters of Castle of Wizardry, our next Belgariad book. I'm hoping that you are still enjoying the series and enjoying the start of book 4. We do have quite a bit to talk about, delving in here, because we start right as we finished off our last book. So dives right back into where we were at, and we're going to see where things go from here. Before we go ahead and dive into the class, let's just go ahead and go over our trivia question as always. Thank you so much for everyone who participates. I always really appreciate you playing with me and getting to see your answers and to announce who gets it right. This week was a little bit of a unique question in the fact that there was multiple answers, and if you answered any of those answers, I did count you as being correct. So we have 5 different people who are correct today from the question, what besides gold do dragons hoard? Answers like jewels, jewelry, shiny objects, I would take any of that, magical items or priceless relics, something of that nature. I counted that all as correct. So correct answers go to Paul, Dan, Tasseloff 42, Roast Beef, and Brendan. So congratulations to all of you who got it correct. Thanks to everybody who did participate and gave it their best shot. I really appreciate it. Had some pretty interesting answers and got to see who guessed what and why. So let's go ahead and jump right in to our recap. But if you did want to answer that trivia question this week, you are welcome to. Just jump onto the blog, fantasyfictionfanatics.net. Go right over to the right-hand side, scroll down just a little bit, it'll be on that right-hand side, or on mobile, if you scroll almost all the way down, it will be there for you to be able to answer. So hopefully you will join playing with us and having a good time together. Okay, let's get into our recap. So as I mentioned, we start right off from where we were at. We get the prologue that deals with the Riven line, how it got destroyed and what has happened then, and then it jumps right in to where we were at with the group escaping from Rakkothel. Now that it is crumbling to the ground, there was a giant earthquake and now the whole entire city is plummeting down off its mountain and they are trying to escape. Belgarath is completely wiped out. He has been so extended from his fight that he is not able to even be conscious on his own. They have to carry him out, and on their way through the caves that they're trying to escape back to where their horses are, they have to pick up Taiba, I think is how you would say her name, T-A-I-B-A. I count that as saying Taiba. Let me know if you guys have a different pronunciation. But they do save her from some rock that has collapsed in from where she's at. So Rel goes in through the rock, grabs her, and brings her out, though it was much to his... he tried to not go in there. He did not want to, but he was forced to and saved her anyway. Luckily, she's not quite as salty about it as Silk is. But as they get her and they make it down to their horses, they wait for the evening and then they escape on their horses out into the night. And they do have people after them, including some Grolems who are trying to get the boy back from them taking him away and are using magic to try and attack the group. Garion does put an end to their interference. He definitely solves that issue and is leading the group at this time as Belgarath is still out of it and Polgara was protecting the boy. And then as they continue escaping, they're continuing going along, but the Murgers are catching up to them and they are now struggling to keep enough lead that they can follow through with their original plan. They're pushing their horses to the brink that they're almost unrideable. They're very much struggling to get away and they're running out of their source of speed. But right as they're going down from the escarpment into the vale, thinking they're going to be all alone, they make it down, and the Algarians that were supposed to come and help them do see them. They are prepared for them and comes out and ride and chases off the Murgos. So the plan ended up being good, even though they went down at the wrong point. But once they are relaxing and they have beaten the Murgos back, Belgarath does fall ill. He ends up shaking and just passing out, almost dying. And Polgara and Garion are doing everything they can to save him from his overexpenditure. And they end up bringing him back to the Algarian kingdom to recover. And that is where we're at, as they are there trying to recover. And Belgarath is just waking up, and we're going to see how good he is doing from there. So, a lot of interesting things, a very concerning chase where you're not sure if they're going to make it or what's going to happen, but they barely make it in time, and their plan does go as planned, even though they come down at a different way. Their backup was able to assess that that might be the case, and they kept an eye out for them and saved them just in the nick of time. And they got their fun killing some Murgos, because that's what they like doing. So it worked out for everybody, though Belgarath is now in a rough spot. Okay, let's go ahead and jump in with the prologue first, as usual. So, not too much to say about this prologue, because it is a little bit of a shorter one, and we've had a couple of these past prologues, so this one's not quite as rich, I feel like, as some of the two past ones that we've had, but it is still important, and it is put there still for a reason. It is a little bit different than our last ones, not just because it's not as rich and not as filled as the last two have been, but also because it is including what is happening now. The parts that we've already read are included in this prologue. So this story is about the Riven Line and about how it's kind of destroyed after a certain point, and that's how, Garion ends up having no family and being on his own. But we see where that point happens, and then we see where we're at now. So it does transcend from the history all the way down to the present. It's not just a history lesson. It's not just an over-encompassing one either. It's specifically about the Riven Line, and it does come to the point of where we're at now and mentions the group going on their journey at this point. Which is kind of interesting, is that this account ties in the past and the present, and not just being a major lesson of what we need to know in order to understand what's going on now. And I can't believe I just said last two prologues a couple of times now when we've had 3 books before this. Sorry about that. Yes, all 3 prologues have been a bit more historically broad, a bit more in-depth, and this one's a little bit more pinpointed. And that is probably because we already know a lot of the history now that we need in order to understand this mission that they're on and what's at stake. So we've already covered a lot of a broad area of the history, so now we're kind of narrowing down that history on the little details that we don't know, and we're bringing it in and looping it back into where we're at right now. So sorry about that, guys. Super interesting start to our story, while still being a little bit light, a little bit kind of a catch up for where we're at right now. So it's not quite a history lesson, it's more of like a, here are some details you didn't know and a reminder of where we're at kind of thing. So definitely interesting to have this little bit of a difference, a little bit of a break from the rich history prologues. But I still think it works, it still is good, and it still feels like we're slowly filling in the information that we need in order to fully understand the whole scope of this adventure, all the way from where it started and what's happened since then until right now, and why right now is important to happen, because otherwise good would not win, and why good must win in this way, and what's been leading them there. So definitely important for filling in those gaps and having that focus for where we're going to be heading next in this book. Now, the rest of this class, I'm going to be focusing on 3 different people and kind of what their role is and what my thoughts are on these particular people in these chapters, because I felt like during this whole escape we do get important details, and it is important things that are happening, but I think what we really see that's really important to focus on, and that what we really are getting the richness of, is the characters that are in this group and the decisions that are being made, and some of them we have evolved and changed, and we have a different perspective now at the beginning of this book. So I feel like the characters are really the focus of this section, and I'd really like to discuss some of them with you. So first one is our new character. I'd like to discuss Taiba. I still feel like that's a weird way of saying it, but it looks like how I would think you would say it. So, but Taiba is our new character, and she's very different and stands out from the other characters that we have. So I feel like she's like Relg was in our last couple of classes with our last ending of the book, book 3. Because she comes in and she's a very different kind of character, just as Relg was a very different kind of character. But she is just different in a different way. She is very confident. She is very not shy. She is very strong-minded. She was a slave, but she does not have any signs of like that having destroyed her spirit. She's very strong-spirited and has gone through everything that she's gone through, and she's like, this is what life is. This is the way things are. Why should I be ashamed of anything? So she's very, very nice. I feel like we can already tell she's a super nice person, but she is definitely not someone who's going to hide. She's not somebody who's going to be shy and back down. She is up front and center, and she's like, this is what I think, this is how I feel, this is what you're doing. Very blunt, very open person, which we don't really have someone who's quite blunt in this way in the rest of the group. Everyone else speaks their mind and they say things, but it's a bit more tactful than Taiba might be. She's very much what she thinks is what comes out of her mouth. At least that's my perception of her, is that she doesn't waste time thinking about things. If she feels it, she's like, I'm throwing it out there. And this especially comes out when we're dealing with Relg. And we see a little bit of a dance already between them, even though it's been such a short time. He obviously didn't want to save her because he feels like touching a woman, and especially this woman who is not shy and who he obviously finds very attractive, is going to make him more sinful. And he's really trying hard at this point now to not have sinful thoughts of being attracted to this woman. And so this causes this tension between them, and most of it's Relg's fault in the fact of this tension being the way it is. It's kind of a little bit of a sexual tension as well as a annoying dislike tension, so it's kind of a mix of both attraction and dislike. At this point, I feel like there's a bit of both in there. And a lot of it is started by Relg, and part of it is finished by Taiba. Both have instances where we see the intrigue that they have for each other, especially because Taiba knows that Relg saved her and pulled her from that rubble heap that she would have just starved in or maybe suffocated, depending on how much air was in there. We don't really know. But she would waste away in there and have a miserable death alone in a cave if Relg had not been able to go in there and save her. So she is super grateful to have been saved by him, but also knows that he acts like a complete jerk sometimes. There is the conflict of him feeling like she is sin, not wanting her to touch him anymore, not wanting her to be near him, having to do his prayers, and she sees this and is hurt by it, but also sees this and is like, I'm gonna poke at that because that seems fun. She's that kind of person that's like, I see the opening and I'm gonna take it, which is a super interesting dynamic at this point. We will see how their relationship moves forward from this point, but she's definitely somebody that stands out from, even not knowing her very long, just from her being in a little bit of time, even in the last couple of chapters of this 6-chapter section, we don't see her that much or hear from her that much. It's mostly when they first get saved and they're first traveling to escape, that we see the most dynamic of them. Then toward the end, we're dealing more with Polgara and Garion and the whole issue that's going on, that everyone's traveling together. So even with this short time where we see the dynamic and we see who she is, she already stands out. She's already a presence in this group. And it will be interesting to see why she is needed as well, because obviously we have had mention that she is a part of this prophecy and this set of people that is being corralled together for this victory that they are after. But we don't yet know why Taiba is going to be important. So we will find out that, as well as how this relationship with Relg is going to go. I mean, we've got two kind of extreme personalities. Maybe not extreme. I feel like Relg is extreme. Hers more of just a prominent, in-your-face kind of personality. A little bit louder personality than, say, Silk or Barak. A little bit more in-your-face, blunt personality. And we're going to see where that takes us and what importance that has for the future of this group. Okay, now let's go ahead and transition to Belgarath. So I want to talk about Belgarath because I feel like we see a new side to him that we haven't seen before. Belgarath is someone who has always been the kind of character that's like, I'm looking at the big picture. He's even talked to Garion and stuff like that and said, hey, we're looking at the big picture here. That Polgara is the personal person, where she sees everything as a personal insult or a personal stab and sees the small events. He's much more of a stand back, look at the whole picture and decide what's really important and what's not in the big scheme of things. But here, we see that he is not putting the perspective of the big overall picture of things first. He is putting himself first and his own pride first. So he's incapacitated and he's finally waking up, he's finally recovering. But he is too prideful, too stubborn to ask Garion and Polgara for help when it's needed magically. Instead, he says he's fine, everything's good, and he is handling as much as he possibly can on his own when possible. Because, I mean, Garion and Pol are doing things of their own volition that he is not counting on, that he doesn't want and doesn't appreciate. But we see that his pride is getting in the way of his health. He, in some ways, is being very selfish by not letting them help him, because he is not taking into the consideration how him pushing himself too far will affect the group, will affect the mission, will affect everything going on, especially when we have Aunt Pol telling Garion, hey, if he doesn't recover from this, which it's possible that he might magically never be able to do magic again, then we have to make it look like he does, because that is an important, essential part of everything, is that he can do magic and that he is someone to be feared. So he is taking a very personal, selfish, and self-centered risk for his pride by pushing Garion and Aunt Pol away and not letting them help out. Garion forces himself upon the situation with the boulders, where he was originally throwing things out, and if Garion had not done that, he would have continued going down that area, facing off the rocks on his own, and would have even expended more power. And Aunt Pol and Garion do at times, throw their magic in, and he's very ungrateful for it and says, oh, I'm fine, oh, I can handle on my own, oh, blah, blah, blah. So we see his pride getting in the way of the big picture, and it's making him now more of a problem. Not only was he incapacitated at first, now he's incapacitated again. Now he almost died. Now he might not be able to do magic ever again. He put himself at risk for this potential scenario to happen, for everything to crumble and fall apart. And what if he had died? If he had pushed himself to the point that he actually had died, what would that do to everything as well? So we really see that he has been making a selfish judgment in this moment, and I wonder why, when it comes to him personally and his own ability to do his own things, that he can't take the bigger picture into account, that he can't accept help. You would think that Belgarath would be someone who understands his limits. He's old enough, definitely, to understand his limits, to understand the risks that it takes to pushing those limits, and to make the judgment to not push himself and to not endanger everybody, including himself and the fate of the world, by doing this. And even if he does recover some magic, we won't know if he's as powerful as he was before. We have yet to see if he recovers his magic and if it's going to be as strong as he was before. Obviously, the gods are in his favor in the fact that they want to have their side win, and Belgarath is the big picture of that, so maybe that could help, possibly, but the gods also can't, always counteract the choices that people make. So, we've seen that so far, is that, they can only interfere to a point, and the rest has to be done by the mortals of the world. So we're going to see what happens, but I just find it very interesting and a very new perspective, a very new point to put in there, to see him being so self-centered and so selfish and prideful that he pushes himself to this limit and risks so much from this decision that he has made. And I think it seems very un-Belgarath-like to me. I'd love to know your opinion on this. Do you feel like this is un-Belgarath-like decision to not accept that he has limits and not understand that he has limits, and to not accept help? Or do you feel like this is exactly what he would do if you look at his character and what he has done so far? And what are your thoughts on him pushing himself to this limit? I'd love to know. I just think it's a very interesting new side of him, and it adds a little bit more depth and a little bit more perspective to his character for sure. Alright, so the last person I want to talk about is Garion, because he's actually the front and center of most of these chapters. It doesn't maybe seem like that, or maybe it does, but really, in the scheme of things, he's the focus that we have going on with these chapters. He is evolving, and though it doesn't seem like with the start of this book, starting right at the edge of where the last book ended, that we would have a lot of growth between the end of one book and the beginning of the next book, but we're really seeing his development, all the things from all the way from page 1 where we saw him all the way till now. He's grown a lot, and we're seeing the accumulation of all those changes and all those experiences affecting him at this stage and where he's at. He's grown so much. He's definitely gotten a lot stronger in his acceptance of his magic. Sure, he's still a bit iffy about having that responsibility and not really wanting that responsibility, which is actually a good thing. It's good that he is not power hungry and excited that he just has ultimate power and can do whatever he wants with it. It is a good thing that he is so on the back burner of like, hey, I really would rather not have this ability, can't I just be a normal person? But he's definitely developed more of an acceptance to his magic, and he is much more prominent in stepping in and helping out when necessary. He's become a lot more developed in how he uses it. Sure, he's definitely still new, and they talk about how he makes a lot of noise still and such as that, but he's gotten more of a chance to figure out how things work and to figure out how to do things much easier and quicker and on the spot than he was when he first started trying to move that rock. Much more on his feet, able to kind of sense it out, tell what he wants to do. Isn't quite so loud, though he is still loud. He isn't quite so abnormously loud. He does use his magic to chase after the golems that were attacking them and wipe them out, magically speaking, which is something unheard of for magic users. Usually when you're a shadow, they say, oh, well, you can't do anything, you're just here. And he exceeds their expectations by stepping in and being like, nope, I can destroy you, even though I'm not physically here. So He's taken a lot of strides in his magic development, developing acceptance for it, and coming to terms with the responsibility that is placed upon him. So I feel like we definitely see the maturity of him with the magic, for sure. Spot on. He is definitely a lot smoother, a lot good in his development. Very smooth paced and mature. Though he still needs his practice, he's still not 100% there. He's definitely made leaps and bounds from when he first discovered that he had magic. Not only that, but he's taking more of an active role in events in general, magically speaking and non-magically speaking. He's definitely matured in how much he can step up to the plate, and he knows when it's time to step up to the plate versus to back down. For example, Pol and Belgarath, when Belgarath is almost dying and Garion does want to be there to help his grandfather and is very stressed about it, he does give a little pushback at Aunt Pol, but then once she says it in a way that it penetrates his, fog of like, I just want my grandfather to be okay, he understands where he is needed and where he's not. Takes an active role in throwing the boulders down the mountain, helping Belgarath do that. He steps up and is like, I'm gonna help out. He was told me no, but I know that this is a time that I can come in and be helpful. He wasn't grateful for it. This was something that his pride was not accepting, but it was a good time, and it was good that he did, because if he hadn't stepped in at that moment, Belgarath would have run out of energy a lot sooner, or possibly just killed himself outright. So Garion definitely is learning more about the times and the ways that he can insert himself into the sections or into the roles that he needs to a little bit more selectively, a little bit more in a way that's actually helpful, instead of him just wanting to be helpful and not be considered a kid and being upset because he just feels like he's being treated like a kid. So definitely is developing in that right. He also was, for a short period of time, the leader of this group, which Silk definitely helped make sure that he was prime and center of that role. And he doesn't think that he's going to be a leader at any point in his life, but he did step up to that plate, though he was very nervous about it. He stepped up, took the responsibility, needed a little bit of guidance because he's never been a leader before. He's always been following Aunt Pol and Belgarath and Silk and everything like that. Everyone else has been the leader for him. So he hasn't had much experience, but he does step up, and you can see from the beginning of when he's like unsure about things, and then the times that he kind of is getting there but messes up and Silk has to remind him, hey, you gotta keep this in mind if you're gonna be a leader, to the end where he's actually making good, solid decisions that everyone's like, oh yeah, it's a good decision, we're making progress, that's a good call. And so we get that little glimpse of him in that leadership role, and he gladly steps back from it as well. Again, this is a situation where we see his maturity in the fact that he doesn't really want to be a leader. He doesn't really want to have magic. He doesn't really want to be an outstanding person. He just wants to be a normal person that is helpful. He wants to be like a Durnick. I feel like that's what he wants to be like. It's just a regular average person who can help out and to be involved without it having to be extra special or a leader or anybody that's, has that great responsibility. But then that he is forced to have this responsibility, he does take it under his belt and decides that he's going to do the best job that he can at it. So, not a power-hungry, grubbing person, which is great for, it has already been shown to us exactly what role he is being groomed for. And also good because he understands that if he has to take that responsibility, he's going to do it good. He's going to try his best to be the best that he can be at it. So he does take it seriously and will step up to the role and up to the plate as best as he can when it's thrust upon him. Now, last but not least, let's go ahead and go over the nitty-gritty. We've got a couple things to keep in mind, as well as, to keep a lookout on or as we move forward through the rest of this book. And the first thing that is attention-catching, at least I think, is that Errand, the little boy that they saved that holds the orb and says Errand, that seems to be his only word that he knows, does change it up and say Belgaron just once, but it is the only thing that he has said that has not been errand. He did say Belgaron's name. And it is his proper name as a magic user. So it is a very important distinction that it's not Garion, but Belgaron. And that is the only thing that he has ever said other than errand. So that's something that's definitely eye-catching, definitely a moment to remember and to see. We're going to find out if that is significant. I think that it is. But how will this affect errand, and what does it mean that he specifically picks up on Belgaron specifically? So definitely interesting that that's the only word that he says at this point other than errand, and that it's his name, and that he smiles so big at him and knows exactly what he's saying. He knows he's saying his name. So definitely an interesting point to point out there. And I also would like to point out that I think it's interesting that Aunt Pole, Belgarath, nobody is really trying to do anything for this boy to keep up the innocence that he has. They're not trying to coddle him or make sure he doesn't notice anything gruesome or anything like that. They're just taking him along, and whatever happens, happens. And they're not overly worried about errand. But my thoughts are, and maybe your thoughts are too, is with everything that's going on right now and all the hardships of life and all the things that are going on, especially with, him kind of being able to detect emotions from people. Like when people are sad or stressed, he's kind of like, oh, errand, says it all sad. And then when people are happy, he's like, oh, errand, like all happy, skippy. So you can definitely tell he can pick up on the emotions of people. He is witnessing things that, are not considered innocent events. So how is being with this group and having these changes made to him, is that going to affect his innocence and his ability to hold the orb? We'll see if that does affect anything or not. I definitely feel like it would be a question for me, is how do you grow up with and teach a kid to be this innocent, especially when they say it's that hard, who doesn't really even know how to talk yet. Like, he's kind of, from where it seems like he should be in the age that they say he is, you'd think he'd be a little bit farther along than that. And will that be affected, or whatever that training and that environment that he was brought up in being changed, will that affect his innocence, and will he be able to continue having ownership of the orb? Next thing I'd like to talk about is that the orb is learning Garion and the others, and it is being right now being just kept solely with the boy. So we are not giving it to Garion. He's obviously, no one else is supposed to take it because, Garion's the only one that's from the ribbon line. But even though Garion is from the ribbon line, they haven't had him touch him yet. And the orb is learning about everybody. It's having that ringing in their heads, especially the magic users notice it the most because it is on a magical wavelength. So the orb is showing its sentience. It is learning. It is transpiring with them, I guess, and growing with them. So it's going to be very interesting to see that perspective with the orb. Is like, as it's learning, as it continues to learn, as it continues to grow with this group, what is its role going to be? Especially right now when it's just being held solely by the errand, by the boy errand. When will it transition to Garion? Because we know that obviously it's going to. It has been set up to be far obvious that that is going to be the case. So when will it change hands, and what will that mean? And what is the orb learning? How will that affect things moving forward? And last but not least is just a quick little thing that is super interesting and is dropped right at the end of chapter 6, is that Garion seems to have a family he didn't know about because he has a cousin. Adara, I believe her name is. And Aunt Pole just throws it out there like nothing. Like, he makes it seem like Aunt Pole and Belgarath are the only two family members that he has. Never mentioned that his mom had a sister of any kind or nothing. Zip. Zero. So it's very interesting that it's just dropped in his plate, especially once he's, side by side with them and has a little bit of interaction with them. And then it's like, oh, suddenly you have family that you never knew about, we never mentioned. So we're going to see what that does for Garion, and how that changes his perspective if he ends up being close with his family and if he ends up liking that side of his family, and what was their story and how they were estranged and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to find out a little bit more about this family that none of us knew that he currently had. Alright, please, of course, let me know about anything you think about for this first 6 chapters, anything I've talked about, any of the things that you think I've missed, anything that you want to add, anything at all. I would love to hear all your thoughts and feelings about the first 6 chapters of Castle of Wizardry. We're getting close through this story. We have this book and one more book, and then we'll be through the Belgariad series, discussing it and analyzing it and everything. So hopefully you are enjoying it, enjoying the things that I bring up to talk about and its importance as we see these characters develop and we see these events unfold. So if you would like to reach out to me and discuss things with me, and down in the comments is not the best place for you, you are also welcome to reach out on Twitter at fantasyfiction1, or you're welcome to head over to Facebook, which is /fantasyfiction1. Go ahead and message me on there. You're also welcome to join our Discord, and you can message me on there as well as your other fantasy fiction fanatics. The link is down below for you if you'd like to join. We've got lots of people over there. We've already got over 40 members now, talking, chatting over there, having a good time. Lots of different fantasy topics that we discuss, and a lot of non-fantasy topics that we discuss, but just learning about each other, learning different things about fantasy, getting good recommendations, and having a great time chatting together. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on there, and be a great place to share it with your fellow fantasy fanatics. If you'd like more content from me, or different kinds of content from me, you're welcome to check out the blog, fantasyfictionfanatics.net. I got tons of different topics over there. Anything that's like fantasy related is over there. Recommendations for film, anime, books, recommendations with book reviews, letting you know exactly what I think of different upcoming books and books coming out currently. Different thoughts on different topics of fantasy or reading or whatever else. I've got it all over there. You're also welcome to have any suggestions of what you'd like to see over there or on this channel, and I'd be happy to make that happen. So let me know if you have anything you'd like to do. And I think that is it today, so I guess I will see you guys in the next class. Bye.